Welcome to Motivation at Hand, Ma. To know is to know how. Case 123 CR00257 TSC Document 139 filed November 6, 2023. In the United States District Court for the District of Columbia. United States of America vs. Donald J. Trump, Defendant. Government's omnibus opposition to defendant's motions to dismiss the indictment on statutory and constitutional grounds. A. The defendant's statutory challenges lack merit. The indictment adequately alleges a violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 371. Continued Part 2. The defendant argues electronic case file number, ECF, numbers 114 at 3-21, that the indictment fails to allege a conspiracy to defraud the United States, in violation of 18 U.S.C. Section 371, which makes it unlawful to conspire to obstruct a government function of the United States through deceit. The government function alleged in the indictment, the process, grounded in the 12th Amendment and the Electoral Count Act, for collecting, counting, and certifying the results of the presidential election, plainly constitutes a federal government function protected against a conspiracy to defraud. Indeed, the defendant does not dispute that this process is a federal government function for purposes of Section 371 CF, EFC number 114 at 14-15. Arguing that the indictment fails to allege obstruction or interference, but not contesting that it alleges a federal government function. Instead, the defendant argues that the indictment fails to allege that he intended to use deceit to obstruct that uncontested function. He is wrong. The general conspiracy statute makes it a crime if two or more persons conspire either to commit any offense against the United States, or to defraud the United States, or any agency thereof in any manner or for any purpose, and one or more of such persons do any act to effect the object of the conspiracy. 18 U.S.C. Section 371. The italicized clause is known as the defraud clause. See United States vs. Attila, 966 F3D 118, 130, 2nd Circa 2020. The Supreme Court has interpreted and upheld use of the defraud clause, either under Section 371 or a predecessor statute, for more than a century. See Tanner vs. United States, 483 U.S. 107, 128, 1987, Dennis vs. United States, 384 U.S. 855, 861, 1966, Glasser vs. United States, 315 U.S. 60, 66, 1942, Hammerschmidt vs. United States, 265 U.S. 182, 188, 1924, Haas vs. Henkel, 216 U.S. 462, 479, 1910. Those cases establish that the defraud clause makes it a crime to conspire to interfere with or obstruct a lawful governmental function of the United States by deceit, craft or trickery, or at least by means that are dishonest. Hammerschmidt, 265 U.S. at 188. Footnote 1. The defraud clause also makes it a crime to conspire to cheat the government out of property or money. Hammerschmidt, 265 U.S. at 188. The Supreme Court has stated repeatedly that the fraud covered by the statute reaches any conspiracy for the purpose of impairing, obstructing or defeating a lawful governmental function of the United States. Kanner, 483 U.S. at 128. Although courts have divided the elements differently, all agree that to establish an unlawful conspiracy under the defraud clause the government must prove 1. The defendant entered into an agreement. 2. To obstruct a lawful function of the government or an agency of the government. 3. By deceitful or dishonest means, and 4. At least one overt act was taken in furtherance of that conspiracy. United States vs. Concord Management and Consulting LLC, 347 F Supplement. 3D 38, 46, DDC 2018. A. The indictment alleges deceit, trickery, or dishonest means. The indictment's allegations of deceit, trickery, or dishonest means are numerous and clear. Footnote 2. For purposes of brevity, this brief hereafter uses the term deceit to refer collectively to deceit, trickery, and dishonest means. As alleged in the indictment, the defendant spread lies that there had been outcome-determinative fraud in the election. These statements were false, and the defendant knew that they were false. ECF number 1 at paragraph 2. As alleged in the indictment, the defendant spread lies that there had been outcome-determinative fraud in the election. These statements were false, and the defendant knew that they were false. ECF number 1 at paragraph 2. Similar allegations continue throughout the rest of the indictment. To start, tracking the established elements of a defraud clause conspiracy, the indictment alleges that the defendant did knowingly combine, conspire, confederate, and agree with co-conspirators to defraud the United States by using dishonesty, fraud, and deceit to impair, obstruct, and defeat the lawful federal government function by which the results of the presidential election are collected, counted, and certified by the federal government. ECF number 1 at paragraph 6. The indictment explains that the purpose of the conspiracy was to overturn the legitimate results of the 2020 presidential election by using knowingly false claims of election fraud to obstruct the federal government function by which those results are collected, counted, and certified. Same as paragraph 7. The indictment goes on to describe the false statements that undergirded the conspiracy, alleging that the defendant, his co-conspirators, and their agents made knowingly false claims that there had been outcome-determinative fraud in the 2020 presidential election, including dozens of specific claims that there had been substantial fraud in certain states, such as that large numbers of dead, non-resident, non-citizen, or otherwise ineligible voters had cast ballots, or that voting machines had changed votes for the defendant to votes for Biden. Same as paragraph 11. These claims were false, the indictment alleges, and the defendant knew that they were false. Same as, the indictment provides examples of these false claims, see same as paragraph 12. Including the defendant's statements that 36,000 non-citizens had voted in Arizona, same as paragraph 19, that more than 10,300 dead people had voted in Georgia, same as paragraph 33. That there had been an illicit dump of more than 100,000 ballots in Detroit, same as paragraph 41. That there had been 205,000 more votes than voters in Pennsylvania, same as paragraph 46. That there had been tens of thousands of unlawful votes in Wisconsin, same as paragraph 52. And that voting machines in various contested states had switched votes from the defendant to Biden, same as paragraph 12F. The indictment identifies 5 ways in which the defendant and his co-conspirators used these lies to obstruct the federal government function by which the results of the presidential election were collected, counted, and certified. Same as paragraph 10, see same as paragraphs 13 to 124. These extensive allegations of knowingly false statements are more than sufficient to charge that the defendant used and intended to use deceit to obstruct the lawful federal government function that was the target of his conspiracy to defraud. The general principles regarding what constitutes fraud are well established. The touchstone of fraud is deception, United States v. O'Hagan, 521 U.S. 642, 653, 1997. And fraud has long been understood to include a broad range of deceptive conduct, United States v. Curlman, 736 F3D 439, 446, 6th Circa 2013, Accord United States v. Colton, 231 F3D 890, 897 4th Circa 2000. Fraud is as old as falsehood and as versatile as human ingenuity. United States v. Reed, 533 F2D 1255, 1264, D.C. circa 1976. The quintessential method of committing fraud is through knowingly false statements, as charged in the indictment. See same as at 1265. Of course, a material false statement contained in a document sent through the mails clearly constitutes a fraudulent misrepresentation and violation of the mail fraud statute. The indictment plainly alleges the use of deceit and The court need not look further than that to deny the defendant's motion to dismiss. To be continued. Part 3. 1. The defendant unsuccessfully attempts to recharacterize his false statements as permissible advocacy or expression of opinion to public officials. Much appreciation to you for giving of your time with us at Motivation at Hand. To know is to know how. We trust you will come back soon.